a session presented by Cognizant. Please welcome Vice President and General Manager, Travel and Hospitality for Cognizant, Joseph Rajadurai, and Chief Commercial and Technology Officer for IHG, George Turner, in discussion with Skift X Research Editor, Jeremy Cressman.
Joe, George, welcome to Skift Global Forum. We're really happy to have you both here.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. It's great to be here.
So there's a number of conversations at this year's forum focusing on how companies in the travel industry are actually accelerating their adoption of technology and evolving their digital strategies in response to the pandemic. So, I thought in this session, we could get some further insight into what a smart digital strategy actually looks like in the travel industry. George, let's start with you and help me set the stage here. What has the pandemic meant for you in the hospitality industry? And more specifically, what are some of the business and customer adjustments IHG has been making in response?
Well, as you'd expect me to say, across the hospitality industry, the pandemic's been a bit of a big thing. And certainly we've all suffered significant impact, particularly in 2020. I would say that having said all that, it's been both a blessing and a curse, because certainly from a technology perspective, it has led to now significant pressure from a pace and innovation perspective. Mm-hmm. The level of pace we need in order to do the things that we really need to do in our industry is unprecedented as far as I'm concerned, certainly coming out of the worst of the pandemic, acknowledging that we're nowhere near through it yet. And from our perspective, that really, you talk about guests, because from a guest perspective, seamless, frictionless, contactless, digital innovation, all so important. And really leveraging data in a way which can enable us to personalize more is a really important factor and something that we're really focusing on. And then from an owner perspective, again, leveraging data in a way which is going to allow us to deliver products and technology to our owners to allow them to operate their hotels so much better from their mobile devices with all of the information that they need. And also all the technology that we can use to ensure that they can run their hotels more efficiently and effectively, allow those amazing hotel colleagues in and around our hotels to ensure that they can deliver the best guest experience every time.
Well, George, I'm hearing a lot of things going on at IHG with regard to technology acceleration, new opportunities to engage with customers, new uses of data, all topics we're going to talk about a bit more in this panel. First, though, I want to turn things over to Joe. Joe, as I understand it, Cognizant helps clients like IHG modernize their technology, reimagine processes at their business, and transform customer experiences to stay ahead in this fast-changing environment. With the recovery already underway amidst this ongoing pandemic, why is this an important moment to focus on modernization?
I think through the pandemic, as George described, it's kind of put a lot of pressure on clients in this sector, and they're having to really pivot their business on a very accelerated manner, because you have new trends that are emerging, like people prefer local vacations than taking a lot of or significant travel. They do more staycations. And you also have a lot more leisure travelers than business travelers. So that creates a sort of pressure in the system on how you respond to them, what do they value. And clearly digital is a very important part of that story. The response to guests need to be that you know the guests, you're very personalized in how you engage with them, and then you give them a seamless guest experience from the time they think about going somewhere or staying somewhere to how they go through that experience, and even the post-travel feedback process. Now, this is not really new. It's been around for a long time, but making this transformation requires you to really think about your business process and how it layers on top of your systems, and connect it front to back. So it's not good enough that we have a mobile app, but the mobile app should have significantly rich features which allow for a very good guest experience. And
right.
To be able to do that requires modernizing your architecture, getting onto systems that are cloud first, very mobile friendly, that allow you to create that experience. And that that the imperative for that modernization continues to be very high. And so therefore, even though the pandemic has reduced demand, it doesn't make the need for modernization go away. If anything, if you modernize now, you could benefit from the recovery. And as the recovery comes, being able to pivot to this will give you a better share of the business.
It's so interesting, Joe. We hear from a lot of companies in hospitality and elsewhere that this is a big focus right now, right? Demand is down in some instances, and it's been a great time to prepare and get ready for what comes next. So I can certainly relate to what you're saying. George, I love your hospitality perspective on this. We definitely saw a lot of disruptions over the past year with the pandemic, whether that was supply related, changes in customer demand. I'm curious how technology has allowed you to respond to some of those disruptions. And then also what some of the benefits of the changes have been that you've made, and if you think that's going to be a long-term shift for you.
Well, I'm sure Joe will have a perspective as well, because clearly we've been working in conjunction with Cognizant on many of these things. But look, I'll give you two primary examples, which I think are good here. The first one is around that, as I mentioned earlier, contactless, seamless experience. And from a check-in perspective, that has been something which has really come to the fore as a result of the pandemic. Now, I think it's also very clear in both these examples to note that we're not actually developing things that we believe do not have longevity. So we're not just relating to solutions that are going to solve issues for the pandemic, but things that we believe have got a much longer term viability within our business. And so therefore are effectively solving for problems or solving for opportunities that we might have for the future as well. The first one is then our contactless experience. And where Cognizant have been great with us is leveraging all of the different data that we've got across many different platforms and managing to get that together so that we can create that seamless check-in experience that is contactless, that we've probably not been able to do in the past, because you wouldn't believe the number of systems that are used to operate a hotel, and therefore how you've got to try and bring all that data together from different places. And I think Cognizant has done a great job of helping us on that front. And the second one is on the revenue management piece. We've had to become so much more dynamic in the way that we price. And again, using the capabilities that Cognizant have, as well as our own capabilities, to come up with much better ways of forecasting has been a significant improvement for us in our revenue management capability. I don't know whether Joe's got anything to add, but those are two great examples, I think, where we've been addressing things which have come across during the pandemic, but also will have a great degree of longevity in terms of solutions as we go forward.
It's so interesting to hear that, George. Skift Research recently released a report on hotel payments, but I think looking at the adoption of that and that increasing, and I think it ties into this seamless experience that a lot more people in hospitality are trying to create through digital means. So definitely a trend that we're seeing, and interesting to hear about the back end as well.
I think I would add one thing there, which is, given that IHG has been on this modernization journey, I talked about modernization, and one of the benefits that IHG particularly had coming into the pandemic is the modernization journey had been underway for a while. So it was easier to make that leap, to be able to offer these seamless experiences, connect the back end, clean up the back end much more efficiently, which allows for that experience to be created.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that this is a journey that a lot of companies have been on for some time. It's just that the pandemic seemed to accelerate that, as much sense, correct? Yeah. George and Joe, I want to ask you, we know that customer traveler expectations are constantly evolving as a result of the pandemic, and that both of you and your organizations are responding quickly to those changes. But I'm curious how this evolution is actually impacting the technology execution model that you're using, and also how you're seeing automation actually help with this process.
I can give you my view, Jeremy, first and foremost, and I'm sure Joe will follow up. But from our perspective, again, going back to pace and innovation, there's no doubt at all that going from a project to product methodology in terms of everything that we do and everything that we're looking at from a technology perspective is so important. So as a delivery mechanism, getting to a point where we are mobilizing multidisciplinary, cross-functional teams, which are not only technology biased, by the way. So it isn't a case of getting a bunch of developers in a room and saying, just create an amazing product for us, but thinking of it end to end and then developing that and then being able to put it out in the market has been such an important part of the way in which we're delivering now. And as a result of the pressures that we've got on pace and innovation, then we've really been able to mobilize in a different way under that product model. The second thing I'd say in AI and automation, and just one example there, is using AI and automation in a way which can improve our contact centers, and being able to get the right call and with the right inquiry to the right place at the right time, and therefore improve our overall guest experience as they call our contact centers, I think has been a phenomenal move forward for us, and something that we're looking even more at how we develop that further. And the point isn't necessarily to avoid the call and just get everything completed via automation, which I know for some can be extremely frustrating, but it's actually getting it to the right place as quickly as possible so that we can address those concerns, those questions, that booking as quickly as we possibly can, and make it as speedy and as efficient as possible.
Joe, what's your perspective on this?
So I think George said it well. The area that I've kind of also seen happen quite a bit is on the front end, when you're thinking about how you engage with guests and what type of offers you make to them. There is significant automation that needs to happen because you have customer data, and then you perform analytics to understand what might be relevant, and then you have to experiment with it to say who will click on what.
Right.
Significantly an automated experience. Most clients do that, and if they're not doing that, they have to get on that journey, because that is pretty important for you to automate the marketing experience part of it. And so that's a significant area where automation can make a difference. Coming into the rest of the operation of the business, I think even on the technology side, how you execute and deliver projects, I think there is automation that goes into running of engagements. How you bring new capabilities to the market. You automate a lot more in terms of being able to release features more rapidly, get into more of a continuous deployment cycle. So there are automations that come into the run cycle as well. And the last item I would add on automation is you have a lot of devices out there. So being able to monitor performance of devices, and then even going into like self-healing type systems, which can look at performance of devices and then patch them through automation, because that minimizes the human intervention and can give you more uptime of capabilities, not just systems, but uptime of business capabilities. These are areas where automation makes a big difference to the life of an enterprise.
Okay. So interesting, Joe. It's the back end efficiencies, and then what George is saying is more about also the front end efficiencies of serving customers better and figuring out those instances where you give things a human touch versus have something that's kind of a process that's continuous be done by automation. Well, we've got about a minute or so, 2 minutes left to wrap things up. I would love to ask you both, what's the next step for technology adoption in travel and hospitality? Where do you see this going, or what's on your roadmap?
For us, Jeremy, as a big hotel brand, IHG Hotels and Resorts, the thing that is without doubt most important, I think, in the future will be integrating hotel operating systems. Because there are a myriad of different systems, as I said before, a huge amount of data that we need to try and get all in one place. And you wouldn't be surprised for me to say that is best all placed in the cloud. So I call it an above property operating system, which then any operator, whether it's a general manager, whether it's the owner of the hotel, can understand exactly how best to most efficiently operate their hotel in the future. And for me, that isn't something that we've achieved as an industry yet, and something that I think that many of us are now focusing on, because we think there are significant advantages of being able to do that in the future, both, by the way, from an owner proposition perspective and an owner value perspective, but also in the way that we can create great guest experiences. We can enable our guests to curate their own stay, to curate their own experiences, to have their own choices. So for me, that's so important.
Joe, any final thoughts in the last closing seconds here?
I think it's really about the guests, and whatever technology that can serve the guests well. I think there are some trends which could really serve those guest requirements very well. One is the significantly greater availability of bandwidth worldwide, which gives more opportunities for how you both meet the needs at the edge. So in property, there is edge computing available, which can really enable you to create new experiences. It could be like virtual concierge type experiences, or it could be controlling, like George said, room temperature and the comfort settings and so on and so forth. So these opportunities are out there, and they could really enhance guest experience. So I would think that's a big trend. And then, of course, automation and other things that we talked about will be really on the roadmap in the years ahead.
Lots of exciting developments, lots of work already been done. Joe, George, really appreciate having you both at Skift Global Forum this year. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.